Welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show podcast. My name is Rich, and I'm the host of this show. Tonight, I'm joined by two co-hosts. We have Ed, who is the owner of Captain Hank's Tackle, and John, who is the owner of Creeley Custom Rods. Tonight, we're going to be talking with Mike, who is one of the owners of Northeast Jig Company. And if you're not familiar with Northeast, it is one of the premier manufacturers of soft plastics and jig heads that you can get out there on the market today, everything from saltwater to freshwater. So really excited to have Mike jumping on the show with us today. So kick back, we're going to jump right into it. This episode is awesome. I'm really looking forward to this. We have one of the most difficult people to reach in fishing in our entire area who somehow made time for us tonight. I know Qua over at Tide Chasers is trying to get Mike as well. We have Mike from Northeast Jigs. Let's bring him on right now. Mike.
What's up, guys?
Welcome. Welcome.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, you are really hard to get a hold of. And it's funny, everybody I said, yeah, I've been trying, the one person I really want to get is Mike. And they're like, oh, I've been trying for months. He's so busy. I haven't even been on the water with him in a year. And these are people you fish with.
Yeah, it's been tough, man. And we were talking backstage, Ed and I, and it's funny. Like, you try to make this footprint in this thing we love, this passion, fishing, and you get so busy, right? And it's crazy the way things happen, man. And eventually there's no time for fishing, which is the sad part. You know what I mean? And so that's always the downside of trying to stay in business, trying to stay relevant, and all that. Where there's fishing usually gets put to the back burner, which is sad to say, but it usually happens. We're trying to avoid that, and we're trying to move out, from that. So we're trying to move on and enjoy what we love to do and why we started doing this in the first place. So.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and two of the three hosts of this know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, Ed, I think he made a comment last week hoping to get stuff done so that he can get out on the water more this year. John hasn't been on the water because he's just stacked with rod orders that he's working on. I'm the fortunate one. My fishing business, not that it's a real business, but my fishing business requires me to be on the water. So my day at work means I need to jump in the truck real early and bring the kayak down to the beach and launch and hopefully catch some things. So I'm the fortunate one out of all of us, but I'm also the one probably making the least amount of a living. I'm not making a living like you guys.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention, Mike, is one of the big things that we try to push on this show. We push conservation is a really big topic, but another one is supporting local companies and small businesses. And in your case, maybe one that isn't as small right now, but started here. You started in Philadelphia, correct?
Yes, we did. The company was actually started in March of 2018 by my partner, my best friend, Dave. We actually worked together, and it was just so random, kind of like I have like 10 years on Dave. He's like 10 years younger than I am. And but fishing, right? Fishing brings everybody together. So he was like in the shark fishing. I never did it. So we're like, oh, we got to get together after work, we'll try it out. So we wound up doing it. We wound up going like shark fishing, hooking up, doing all this stuff where, we're making rigs and we had a blast, man. Like I said, just anybody who shares the same passion you do, obviously, you know what I mean? You hit it off from the gate. And that's how Dave, and I were. And so we would fish soft plastics. And basically, like I said, we're based out of Philadelphia. So after work, we would drive in rush hour traffic an hour and a half to catch certain tides, right? It might be an hour and a half, it might be 2 hours, and that was it. You know what I mean? But we think we had them dialed in, right? You know what I mean? So, you're trying to catch a certain tide. And basically, we were fishing soft plastic. They're getting beat up, they're getting torn up, and we were like kind of tired of it. And we had this idea. We put like a couple bucks together. And we're like, oh, why don't we try, make on our own, doing this, doing that. And, and we did it. It's kind of basically how it started, how, Dave and I met and we kind of like just rolled in from there.
Yeah. And you have, the two of you have done a great job. I mean, your your soft plastics are among the most durable. They have a different consistency than the others that just seem to work. Chris Matusin was talking about how, he throws a Betty White on there, and the way that it just sits in the water is the game changer for him. And, he swears by it. John is, John for a while. John absolutely swears by your stuff. I'm going only your soft plastics this year.
I appreciate it.
I used to be a Z-Man guy, and
a lot of people are.
Yeah, but you know what? I use yours, and I prefer yours. So I'm just going to save the Z-Man for the Bluefish. Let them just tear them apart until they're all gone. And I'm getting set to stock up for the spring, and that is kind of one of the topics that I thought that we should go through tonight. Is here I am. I'm ready to buy all your stuff this year, so I'm going to head out for spring striper. So what are you recommending I start with? What am I stocking up with?
So I feel like this is like every bass fisherman's like, this is like the Super Bowl, right? You know what I mean? You got a 70-degree day. We're going to get more 20, 30-degree days, so it's like a tease, right? So like, but we know spring's coming. We know, bass just opened in the back bay on March 1st. We know the big fish are going to be in the river. We know they're going to be moving. Like, so this is, bass fisherman's time, right? Like I said, this is when, like, you call out of work, you use all the permission slips from your, everything you got, you know what I mean? You're out, right? And so this is what it's about. So, and when I was listening to Chris talk about how you go to the river, you spend all this money on bloodworms, you know what I mean? You may not use them, and you don't need bait to catch fish in early spring. I mean, that's a proven fact. I've been with Chris early spring, and so he's a local, right? He's local to these waters, so he knows. Same thing. He knows these tides, right? Like, this is when we got our best shot. And like I said, we went and we hammered them. And like I said, it was blowing, whatever, 20, 30. It's 30 degrees out. We got our stormers on, you know what I mean? Freezing. And we're catching, right? So, like, you don't need to sit there and soak bloodworms, to catch big fish. Like, it's just, people think that's what we have to do. But so what I recommend, we talk about Betty White, right? Like, that's our famous bait. And all these names were brought up and made by Dave, to get that right. He's like he's the artistic one of the company, basically. So he came up with all these names. We have a ton of baits, a ton of names, and like, this was our popular, like, white. You can't go wrong with white. It catches every fish, every species. So right there, a 4.5 Magic Mullet Betty White, absolutely need to be in the bag. That every size, every style bait of that needs to be in the bag for spring. So that's a given fact. Like I said, we have up to, I think, 17 colors. We dropped a few, added a few. So I think it's about 17 and 3 different style baits as of right now. So it's a lot of colors, right? So everybody goes with what they know, and everybody knows white. And that's kind of, so we have multiple colors. I've caught tons of fish on all colors. But that right there, like, obviously it's a number one seller and we can't keep it in stock.
Yeah. John, I know you're a big Betty White fan.
Yeah.
This is what you're using as well, correct?
Primarily I use the rippers. I just like the flutter and the rippers better. I feel like the consistency of the swims, that's just me. I think that's a personal choice, but color wise, it's Betty White.
Yeah, and I know Matusin had mentioned those. That's his go-to. But I think the interesting thing, I mean, we could talk about colors all day, and everyone's going to have their own opinion. I am personally drawn to whites and purples and blacks if I'm fishing at night. Although not always purples and blacks at night. White works really well. Weak fish on pinks at night really works well. But the size is really the big determining factor for me in the spring versus the fall. And I'm typically going smaller. Now, is 4.5 the smallest size that you have?
No, the smallest size we carry is 3.5. And the ripper, so I actually have, so this is, if you guys can kind of really see, like, this is a 3.5 inch ripper shad with a 3/8 jig head on it. So it's fairly small. perfect for the springtime. Like I said, 3/8 is usually my money, 3/8 the half ounce, but that's a 3.5 inch Ripper shad. So you can see it compared to a 4.5. So it's a little smaller, still a fatter type profile. And then we also have a 3.5 Magic Mullet, which is great for like when fish are keyed in on like silver side, certain things, smaller bait fish. I've been around bass boiling and you're throwing everything, every possible thing you can throw, and they're not touching it because they're so keyed in on whatever bait that is, that size profile. And, and it's frustrating as fishermen, you're there, you see them blowing up, they're rolling on bunker, silver side, or whatever they are, and they're not touching your lure. And it's frustrating. You know what I mean? It's hard to walk away from that. But
right.
It happens a lot. You know what I mean? It happens a lot in the spring. It happens a lot in the fall. Like I've been there many times. And, you see the water, boiling as you're walking up on the light reflection, your heart's pounding, you're all excited. And like, this is it. And not, and not a tap. So I've been there many times.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. Can get frustrating. Yeah, the Betty White was just the color that that I've been mentioning because that's the one that everybody talks about. I'm guessing it's your flagship color that you're best known for, mainly because that's what I know you for. What are some of the other more common colors that people are pulling out in the spring for the striped bass specifically?
So, like you said, you are like a dark, a blurple at night, you know what I mean, right? So depending on moon, all that stuff. But again, I'm the same way. So one of my second favorite color is the Ghost Malone. It's a purple top with a clear. It's tough to see on here, but it's a purple top with a clear belly, a bunch of purple flakes in there. And this thing this is my go-to besides Betty. I've caught tons of weakfish, bass, specks on it, flounder, everything. So I've caught all types of species in the Northeast on this color. So this is usually my go-to in the spring. So I'm fishing this usually at night. Sometimes I'll throw it during the day, depending on like tide, moon, things like that. But this is like you said, everybody's got their favorites. Obviously, Betty White #1 and Ghost Malone #2.
Right. Well, I mean, you can't go wrong with white. Out of all the colors, that is the most proven color.
Right.
I mean, you can catch anything on it. Doesn't mean it works all the time.
Sure.
But I would just wager to say that every species ever caught has been caught on white. You can't necessarily say that about every color. Now, what you were just holding up was a standard paddle tail. Do you have a name for that, or you just call it a paddle tail?
So this is actually the Magic Mullet.
Magic Mullet. Okay.
Yes, this is the 4.5 Magic Mullet. It's funny, same thing. You prefer green, I prefer white. People prefer Ripper shads, people prefer the mullet. They swim different. Like I said, this is more ribbed, so you're going to get more vibration as you're swimming it along. This is actually will cut through current. It's all, like I said, it's all personal choice on the way. Again, tides, currents, things like that. On the way the action is insane on these. We swam them. We're actually working on getting some type of like TikTok thing running right now where we can actually show like the action on these is like insane. And again, like I said, the durability on these, like I said, we know we're Z-Man, we're this, we're 10 times tough, we're all this, and it's all good, but we're not 10 times tough. But we've had multiple people. You can read reviews on Tackle Direct, personal on our Instagram, anything that guys caught up to 30, 40, 50 fish. Matt Farrell's he has a Schools in Session Ripper shad nailed to his wall that he's caught over 50 bass on. Not in one session, but the same bait that he finally retired. And he said, you can ask, you know what I mean? You can ask him, and he's a big advocate and tag and release guy, and he does a lot for the community as well. So, but so like again, it goes durability, and that's what we're at. So we were trying to stay at a price point where you're not, constantly buying, and we're fine with that. We're totally fine with that.
Yeah.
We like the bluefish, blitzes every once in a while, but at the end of the day, like you said, we want people to say like, I've caught multiple fish on, just this one, and that's, like I said, that's the way we like to, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, so. I can tell you, I've caught multiple bluefish on yours. They are durable. I also think they have better action than, like I said, I'm always been using Z-Man, but yours, I had a few packs of yours, and I think I only had the Ripper and the Magic Mullet. I don't know if and there's a third one, I believe.
Yes, we're actually re-releasing them in about 2 weeks. The Moab, we actually wound up making like about 2 years ago. We wound up redoing it, and then we never launched it last year because of COVID, things like that. So we actually held it. So I think you have one picture of Captain Mark at the Philly Hooker with that big bass and his and that was actually an 8-inch Moab. Where we at? There he is, right there. So that's Captain Mark at a CI of the Philly Hooker, and that is an 8-inch, the real deal, with a 2-ounce bullet with a bullet jig on it. And like I said, he was out hammering. So we actually gave him a bunch of test fours. This is late. This is down south, so he's out. That's December. So that was the end of the season. So we never got a chance to launch him, but now we're launching them this year in about 2 weeks. So we have an 8-inch that you could throw with the, any type of weighted hook, anything like that. So we have an 8-inch, and then we also carry the 5.5, which is phenomenal. They can be fished all different ways. You can fish it like a bucktail. You can fish it like a swim shad. You can reel slow, pop. I've caught multiple fluke last year on this, multiple bass with Captain Mike Smith. Never enough last year, but like I said, so they're proven again. We just have to launch them. So they'll be ready to go by April.
I'm pretty sure that Dan Carey is going to be buying those. Those, based on his style for fluke, I can almost guarantee he's going to be buying those up, and I can guarantee you I will. I love that. That looks awesome. Definitely.
And again, we have 9 colors to choose from. So like I said, you're going to find any color, all proven. Again, it's always right time, right place, but fluke aren't scared of this. And like I said, we've caught multiple fluke, all back bay. Like I said, you guys are kayak guys, you know what I mean? So as you're pedaling, like I said, you can bounce like a bucktail, same thing. It'll do the same thing. So we'll make sure to send you guys some over so you can try them out. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, I definitely would like to try them out. Let me bring this back up. So one of the comments in the chat was pretty funny. I mean, your partner is amazing at naming these colors. so here are some of the colors. You want to just go through and give people the names of the colors that are on screen, and maybe the others that we don't have up here?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So starting top left, obviously Betty White. That was, like I said, that was like the best. You know what I mean? Under Betty White is sunglasses required. Under sunglasses, we have Ghost Malone. Top right, that's actually Bangin' Bubblegum. That's actually named from Noel, after Noel at One Stop at AC. That was actually named, hashtag Bangin'. That was actually named after him. Under that is Schools in Session. That's like a sand eel color. And under that is Dreams and Nightmares. So, light, natural, bright, dark. So it hits everything.
And I do love those colors. I mean, they all look great. Andrew was asking, do you have a jerk shad style? And that would be the Moab is the closest to that. It
exactly. We tried a jerk shad. It wasn't for us. Like I said, it's, you try things, they don't really move as well. You think you drop it, right? So we tried it. We dropped it. Certain colors we tried, we dropped them. So it's constantly, you're trying to evolve and and everything. So you're just trying. That's all you're doing. But again, the closest thing we have is the Moab, which would be like the 5.5, like a jerk style bait, and you can fish it exactly like that. So exactly what it's going to do, like a fluke style zoom. So
we got one from Joe too. Do they come with scent?
They do. So they have a special scent. I mean, really, it's a little bit of everything. So I really can't say. So I can tell you guys later. But
yeah.
So they are scented. Yes.
Did you unlock the secrets to Galt?
I did not. I've heard people try, but no, I have not. So we're still working on that. So.
Now do these? So they do come scented. However, are they good? Are they porous enough to hold other scents that you add on? Well, here we go. Looks like Billy's asking that question.
Yeah, so they will. So we do like a Procure. When we're fishing like weekies and things like that, we'll do like a shredder crab Procure on there. But yeah, absolutely. So and you know how sticky and like the Procure is, right? So like I said, we'll slide that on there, and we fish them all the time like that. So and they stay on there. So, but like if you like let them soak in gulp juice, I don't think so.
No.
You know, I'm not going to BS and say they're going to work like gulp. I probably not. You know what I mean? Gulp's like a whole different. Forget how they do it, but whatever it is, it sucks it up, and is that our plastics are made totally different.
Right.
So it might hold a scent, but it's not going to be. You know what I mean? It's not going to be anywhere close. No. So
right. Well, and theirs fall apart. You know.
You're
exactly losing them on a fluke.
And you're paying $8-9 a pack.
Right, and a fluke's biting through it. I mean, it's a totally different thing.
So, or when you're late in the season and you got baby sea bass and you're frustrated, and it's the worst. So it's a terrible.
Yeah, and I look at so gulp is a whole different type of fishing. Gulp it is a lot about the scent over the action, and you're not typically going to be taking a magic mullet or a ripper. It's not, I guess you could, but it's not appropriate just to be vertical jigging that thing. It's not appropriate to just let it sit, because the magic of these is in the action, and the action happens with the movement. And to me, this is just my personal opinion. Mike, I'd be interested. Ed, John, your thoughts on this. My opinion is the sense on a non-gulp scented plastic is to get them to bite it a second time or hold it, just a fraction of a second longer for that strike, so they don't immediately taste something they don't like, and it just elicits that reaction strike. They grab it and they don't drop it immediately, because if you've ever hooked a fluke using a soft plastic like a Zoom, I used to catch them on Zooms all the time, but they would drop that instantly. The second they tasted it, the second it got in their mouth, they're dropping it. Seems like you get just a little bit extra when you have a scented bait.
Yeah, well, and the plastic that Gulp uses, it's actually, I'm going to touch on a couple of things while I got the mic, but the plastic that Gulp uses is different. It's more supple in the hand. It's not plasticky, so it's more. I think it feels more natural to a fish than like a Zoom or something like that. And then Andrew was asking about the dart spins. So when I was out fishing the other night, I was going between the Northeast and the dart spins. I caught more on the Northeast. Didn't catch any on the dart spin. But the hyperelastic is more on the Z-Man side of things versus the Northeast side. Their plastic's a little more dense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it doesn't move as well.
So real quick question. Have you ever had one of my plastics completely melt in a bag before?
Nope.
So there you go. So
and they play well with everything else. Those hyperelastics, you can't. They have to be separated from everything.
Sure.
Well, and Z-Man, Z-Man as well. You cannot let Z-Man touch anything else, because it will literally destroy your tackle box.
No. Our colors are non-bleed, so you can mix multiple. Same thing, right? You have a little back bay box. You guys are on kayaks. Space is critical, right? So you have a little fluke box, a little bass box, and I have plastic stacked on top of each other, and never had a problem once. Never had any of them melt. And I'm not saying anybody's company, but $6 for a 2-pack, and and had to rip them off each other and ripped in half. So I was done after that. You know what I mean? So and that's what I'm saying. So it's all everything that sounds good, but our plastics are proven.
Yes.
The durability. The hard part of this whole thing was trying to get these in you, Ed, and John, and everybody else's hands, right? So like I use X, you use Y, he uses Z. Now who are you, right? Like, and you're like every Joe Schmo that says, oh, I own a tackle company, or I do this, I do that. And that was the challenge, and that was the challenge to the company. And I literally had to go bang on doors and go to every bait shop in person. And that's how basically we started, you know what I mean? And that's always the challenge. So, and that's what we did from the very beginning.
If I can say, you guys crushed it for sure. I love using your stuff, and it's not because you're a guest here, and it's proven it works. I love it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the difference. I mean, you didn't get me by knocking on any doors. You got me because people that I respect said you need to try this. And I said, okay, let me try some, and then bought a few bags, and I was like, wow, these are better. I love the action, and I what I haven't noticed is what Chris had mentioned about how they just they have a different consistency, so he's able to swim them differently in the water than some of the other soft plastics. However, I've never looked for that, and I'm not the clinician on the water that Matusin is. I'm not. I guess I'm not as precise as him. I'm vertical jigging fluke. I'm casting up into a flat, and I'm running in a couple inches of water. If I'm looking for fluke, which is typically what I'm doing. Like it's typically using these for fluke. So, but man, you didn't get me by pounding on it. You got it because of the reputation, and the reputation that I heard came from some people that I respect and really like to see what was working for them. And then when they suggested, I tried it, and I did what anybody did. I bought a few bags. I didn't say, well, I'm done with everything else. I bought a few bags, and they all worked really well. And you are correct. They never melted. And again, you may not want to say the names. I'll say the name. I can't tell you how much Z-Man I've gone through because I'm in a kayak, and they just end up touching each other sometimes. And I had to pull some out of my drive. I have a waterproof section in the drive of my kayak, and they dumped out on the bottom by mistake a couple of bags, and I had to pull out 2 bags, $14 of melted Z-Mans, which is disgusting to pull out of the bottom of a drive. And that's where I put my food. So it's going in Z-Man goop.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. So all right. So we talked a little bit about the spring striper. What's going to change as we start heading, into June and into the summer for the striped bass?
So in the spring, I'm usually early spring, right? I'm usually throwing a ripper shad, say like a 3.5 to a 4.5, perfect style. So, but the fish, like I said, the fish are still lethargic, right? So we're low and slow for everything. We're fishing an outgoing tide, either the top, the bottom, whatever you prefer, but we're low and slow. We're small. We're using small profile baits. As the water starts to warm up, that's when we can kind of increase. We can go to a 4.5, a 5.5. When the big fish are moving, we're going to an 8-inch, a 4.5. And as summertime, starts to creep in, the water's warm. We're fishing at night. We're fishing early morning, things like that. I'm throwing the same thing, 3.5, 4.5. Usually 4.5 is the money one for me. Like I said, I'm throwing the Magic Mullet, like a ripping tide. I'm casting up current to a ripping tide. I'm reeling slow. I'm throwing a ripper shad. It has the ribs on it for the vibration to attract the fish. We got moving current, things like that. That's my go-to is a 4.5 ripper shad. 3/8 half ounce, usually no more than that. Summer, spring, fall, usually my go-to. And then the mullet, I usually do more of like a top of the tide, bottom of the tide type thing, where it's just going to smooth the action in that calm, slowing tide. It seems, I don't know what it is or why it works, but that's usually what works for me. So I'm usually I'm usually like I said, and I hear Chris talking about it too. Like I don't know why certain things work. But usually that's for me. I'm usually a Magic Mullet, top of the tide, bottom of the tide, slow moving, and then anything else. If I'm fishing, if I don't have the luxury to fish the last 2 of the outgoing or the top, and I'm fishing a hard ripping tide, I'm fishing a 4.5 and I'm making noise, and that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish, to get a fish to commit to it.
It makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, you want the ripper in the heavy currents. I'm theorizing because there's so much water moving, you got to make a disturbance. You have to make a pronounced disturbance, unless you're just going for a visual strike. But if you're gonna get something that's hitting that lateral line and drawing their attention, you're going to need something more aggressive. And those rippers are very aggressive. So it makes sense. The Magic Mullet, maybe in the Moab, in the slower water, you have a pretty aggressive tail on that Magic Mullet as well. So that's going to throw out some vibration, but nothing like the ripper.
Right. The ripper, you have, it's designed, you have ribs on it, the tail as well, but it's more right to make noise. And we're trying to attract fish. We're trying to get that, either reaction strike, or we're actually trying to get one, that's hunting. So that's kind of what we're going for. We're trying to make noise. You have a hard ripping tide. I want to I'm not low and slow. Like I said, it's it's late spring, it's May, it's almost fluke season. Like I'm usually tipped down, and I'm usually ripping it. And that's kind of how I go. Like I said, I'll rip it, I'll slow, let it sit, I'll pump it, and that's kind of how I fish. And then so we try different techniques, right? I can pop a ripper shad. I've caught many fish by doing that, like reel, stop, pump, and then and then they hit on the pump, but they're not hitting on the reel. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So like when you get out there, you have to feel kind of what the night's gonna feel like or the day's gonna feel like, and you have to adapt. Again, like we taught, that's just style. And again, they may not want Betty White that day. They may want sunglasses. They may, the water stain. They want we're waiting for an east wind or a west wind. We're trying to clean up, and we're using something a little brighter. So I used to think colors were, like I'm like, there's no way. Like we're using colors just, so we can sell more baits. And then I've been out there where we're fishing the same thing. They're touching one and not touching the other. Like, so it's been proven.
Yeah.
And it's, so I would always psych myself out like, nah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But like, why are we a blurple at night and a white during the day? Or, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's weird. And it's whatever works for everybody. We try multiple colors, whatever the hell is going to get us a fish that day. Right. Yep. You know what I mean? Like they try to beat the skunk is really what it is. So I'm throwing everything in my bag. I don't care if it's a bluefish. I'm throwing every place like I got. Like I'm trying to get hooked up, and that's why we're out there. So. Yeah,
I agree. It's funny. I always tell Ed that I don't care about the color until I'm not catching anything, and I'm like, "Did you bring any others?"
Yeah. We need another color.
He's like, "Yeah, use this," and then all of a sudden I'm catching.
Yeah,
we did that with the tog jigs. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to throw on one of them. And I put on one of his, and he's like, you should switch it up. I'm like, well, I didn't bring any others. So he handed me sand flea. Then I started hitting them. Sand flea color. And, with literally the same exact spot. The other two are catching. He and Mike are catching. I'm not catching anything. But I switch up, and then all of a sudden I'm catching. So I like to pretend that colors don't matter, but they do. And I don't know why. No. I don't know if a fish sees pink the same way that we see pink, but I know that a fish will hit pink more. A weak fish will hit pink more often. I know that a winter flounder somehow, for some reason, is drawn to yellow. And I guess I don't have to understand it, but I do know, and I can have plenty of anecdotal evidence that one color isn't catching, something else will be catching, and it'll be literally right next to you, and you're going to want to smack that guy in the head.
That's it. I mean, and we have like up in the Northeast, we have the colors we like, right? Like our tops, the white, the pink, the black, the green, the yellow. So it's like the nuke chicken, right? We got the best of both worlds. We got a yellow, we got a green, pink, whatever. And so like they don't fish nuke chicken anywhere else. Like my buddy down North Carolina, Ryan Rose, you actually have a picture on there. When I'm catching the stud speck on a magic mullet, and he tried it, and so he fishes it, but so there he is right there. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a stud. Like I've caught few.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And, the guy's a maniac, and that's what he does. He's a kayaker. He's sponsored by a lot of guys, and that's what he does. And he did the same thing like that, heard about this, reached out, and that's what that guy does when he goes out and fishes. And he catches all different types of species. So he's a local. He's down North Carolina, and that's what he does, and that's what he goes out and catches. And you say, the bass aren't as big down there, but he's getting monster trout, redfish, and he's doing the same thing you guys are doing up here, in South Jersey. He's doing this down there, and it's amazing. He's actually a professional photographer as well. So he's sponsored by American Fishing Company, Dexter, I think Extra Tough. He's sponsored by a bunch of people, and so he takes like these ridiculous pictures as he's out. Like he's a guy with a GoPro set up, different angles, and he takes like these insane pictures and like these high quality pictures, and he would send them to us, like, and they were amazing. So he does all this from a kayak. So he's helped us. He's helped us a ton down south, just like Chris has helped us a ton up north here. So, like I said, this guy, he's phenomenal too, and he's a great fisherman, and that's what he does. And that's a stud. That's a stud trout. You know what I mean? So
that thing's crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know how big it was, but he'll send me pictures like that all the time. of reds and trouts. And like I said, I've caught a few in South Jersey, and like I think my biggest one was like 21 inches maybe. I actually got my biggest weak fish last year, which was 26 inches. And I actually thought it was a bass. Like I've never seen a weak fish over like anything over like 20 inches. And I was screaming. It was like 2 a.m, bottom of the tide, fish are busting. And like I said, man, and unfortunately, like I said, I had to keep it because I was pulling it up in a jetty, and I felt bad. It was a beautiful fish. I would have loved to let it go, but I wound up taking it. And so it was like I said, it was insane. I never thought I would catch a weak fish like that. I've heard stories in the 80s that guys would be like, oh, we would stand them up in trash cans on boats, this and that, and then you hear the guy next to him like, yeah, I wonder where they all went. I'm like, yeah, they're all on the side of the road dead. These guys were just discarding them. Like, so it's like that's what happens. That's what happens, right? You take fish you don't need. You take bluefish and weak fish, and they disappear. And guys wonder why. Yeah, where are the bluefish? They haven't showed up in 2-3 years in South Jersey. Like, yeah, you know what I mean. And so but they're coming back. The weak fish are coming back for us. There's hundreds of thousands of spikes in the Delaware Bay. They're getting bigger. They're around. They're under the bridges. They're on the rocks. Like, and they're so much fun, man. And that's probably obviously besides bass, like weak fish is my favorite thing. And like I said, big, small, man, they're a beautiful, beautiful fish. So fun to catch. And like I said, obviously when you hook one, you land one. It's awesome, especially from land or anything like that. You know what I mean? Somebody where you're not paying somebody to put you on, and to go out and accomplish to catch a species like a bass or a weak fish. And people are always like, oh, was it a keeper? I'm like, does it matter? I mean, really, does it matter, right? Like I said, you go out and you set a goal to go hunt a species, and you accomplish that goal, regardless if it's a 12-inch fish or a 40-inch fish. Like, it's the same thing, right? You know what I mean? So I love when people say, was it a keeper? I'm like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I'm we're out there for the, the tug is the drug, and that's why we're there. So, it's funny.
Yeah. So we've got this ridiculous storm is just hitting us right now. So
I hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. It is ridiculous. So I apologize for the background. I mean, our road is already flooding. So I don't know. So sorry about that. Sorry about the background noise. If you guys want to jump in and ask some questions, we've got a big thunderstorm rolling through right now. But I did want to mention, though, I think it's important to point out that these jigs and these plastics are working. It's the speckled trout there, but you had mentioned the redfish. They're going to work for everything. Anything that's one of these types of predators, the striped bass, the weak fish, the bluefish. I mean, you see a beautiful cobia there too.
Cobia.
I mean,
that's actually on the 5.5 magic mullet. That's out of St. Charles in Virginia. Like I said, where the cobia is, like they're hunting for like 100-pound cobia down there, and under the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. My wife and I actually booked a charter down there last year. We went, and it was tough. We searched all day, and we wound up getting like 2 off a pot, and that was it. But nothing. They weren't even keepers. She actually wound up getting the biggest one, but that's a nice cobia. So I know they catch them in Jersey a lot. I know Captain Joe Cunningham catches them a lot, like I said, but I've got to catch one in Jersey. So I actually paid to go down there to catch a 50, 100, whatever, and you know what I mean. So that's the way it goes. But that's a beautiful cobia. But that's actually in Virginia.
Yeah, it's worth the trip, right?
It's definitely
absolutely.
That.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also freshwater. We didn't include any freshwater pictures, but I mean, your baits are being used to catch freshwater fish all over the place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the freshwater. It's absolutely, like I said. I'm not just. We don't discriminate against it. Like I said, I grew up, and that's how we started. Was fishing pennypack, all these little creeks and streams, and that's how we started. Before we got into saltwater fishing, but they absolutely 100% are proven in. There's pictures on Instagram. You want to check the Instagram out. Guy Timmy Bazzelli actually and Vince Battaglia with a couple stud muskies the same day in the snow. Nobody's there on a 4.5 magic mullet. So it's proven. We just don't put them up a lot. Like I said, my cousin Richie Sobin, he actually has. He's a freshwater guy in South Jersey. And that's all he catches is largemouth, pike, all types of stuff. So I have a ton of pictures. We just don't put them all up. But 100%, proven in freshwater as well.
All right, so let's make a little switch. Let's jump into fluke though. Fluke is one of those things down south. They're using paddle tails and soft plastics all the time. Up here, it has turned into a John Skinner gulp fest. And I think a lot of people have mistaken that with you have to use gulp and you have to use minnows or else you're not going to catch them. What are you typically going to recommend to somebody who wants to stock up for the upcoming fluke season?
So we've caught them on both, right? Like we've caught them on the rippers. We caught them on the mullets. More the mullets, like I said, the rip. Who knows? Are they reaction strikes? You bouncing it on their head? Are they chasing it? We don't know, right? But we were catching. I actually caught my biggest one last year at Avalon. It was like 24 inches on a magic mullet, 4.5, and same thing, was not even reeling and letting the current do its job. 3/8 jig head, and boom, like I said, once the line got tight, that was it. You know what I mean? And hooked up. But so I actually prefer 3.5 magic mullet and 4.5 magic mullet for any type of fluke. I know, minnows. I understand. Gulp, like I said, it's expensive. Gulps, it's also proven, but also these plastics are also proven. So that's actually, it's a great picture. That's Tyler Spader, another professional photographer. He took that, but that's what I'm saying. So that it's not, you don't need gulp, just to catch. It catches everything. So like I said, that's a magic mullet right there for a 4.5, and Tyler catches them all day. So.
Real quick, Mike, since we're on the subject of fluke, and there's a question here, which me and you've talked about too, is a lot of guys don't know how to use paddle tails fishing fluke. But the one question I seen was jig heads or bucktails. What do you prefer, and how are you fishing it?
I don't want to, like I said, I'm not trying to, bucktail guys. Again, it's personal preference. For me, if I'm going out, you won't catch me fishing a bucktail. That's just me. So I will be fishing a jig. I know. So that's why I said, that's why I want to say, I didn't even want to bring it up. So that was a tough question. Thanks, John. You definitely made me step in that.
No problem.
So
listen, as long as you're not fishing a creely rod, we're good.
I hear you. I'm a single jig head. In the back bay, no teaser, single jig head. With the mullet or a small gulp on there, something like that, and that's it. That's all I'm using. No, I know diehard fluke guys. My buddy Jimmy and all these other guys down the shore, and like I said, they love floating minnows, and I can't do it. They showed me how to do it. They catch a ton of fish doing it, but I've also been out with my buddy Jimmy. He's floating, and I'm a single jig head where I'm catching. He's not catching, so I don't know. I'm a single jig head, but here you go, and I'm fishing it like a bucktail though. So I'm just not using a bucktail. So I will float it. I'll let you know, and then I'm popping, I'm reeling, I'm popping. So I'm fishing a bucktail. You could say, I guess, but single jig head. That's all I use.
Don't be surprised if a package shows up on your door.
Don't worry, Ed. I'll take your side on the bucktails. I'm 100% bucktails first. Doesn't mean I don't fish the naked jig head with the soft plastic on it too. I actually pretty much always have one strung up on the kayak, and that's what I'll typically use in the shallower water. So if I'm fishing under 4 feet, I'm usually not going to be using actually, I shouldn't say I'm not using the bucktail. I'm more likely to use the naked jig head with the soft plastic in that situation. Whereas when I go deeper water, which is typically where I am, again, I'm fluke fishing. I'm looking for those sharp drop offs and everything. I'm using a little heavier weight, and I'm using the bucktail for that. I'll say this honestly, you can catch them both ways. I just prefer the little extra visual action on a bucktail from the profile, when the fish comes off to the side, and especially with the fluke, a fluke will often come up behind a bait and just kind of glide behind it, and then it'll swim off to the side, look from the side, go to the other side, go up above it, go underneath, and then hit it. It's a personal. It's like you said, it's a personal preference thing. Your preference is the naked jig with the plastic. Mine is the bucktail. John, what are you coming in at?
I've been fishing the silicone skirt for probably about the past 3 years. So, I mean, I don't know if you consider that a bucktail. I personally don't.
It's not.
Yeah, he's heartbroken. But now, since we've made the change over to Captain Hanks, going to be fishing the bucktail a lot more.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I'll say this: a silicone skirt is not a bucktail. It's not. It has, just put it in the water and move it. You know, there was a question about what size hook to use. I have my opinions on that, Mike. I'm interested in your perspective on the size hook to use specifically when you're fishing these plastics.
So when I make a 3/8, and so that's an odd, that's probably a 3/8 odd jig right there. So a 3/8 and a half ounce, both take the same hook. It's a 3287 Mustad 3/0. So it's a 3/0 hook, which is perfect for bass, fluke, weekies, blues, everything. So my go-to for for the fishing I do, a back bay fishing, is 3/8 to a half ounce. Anything above that, I'm going 3/4, 1 ounce. I'm jumping to a 4 or 5/0, and I don't feel the plastic or whatever you're using would sit correctly. You know what I mean? Like I said, I feel like I have a wider gap, and I feel like the smaller the gap, the better hookup ratio I have. That's just me personally. I'm usually like a 3/0. You know, if I'm doing like anything like that, because I'm fishing 3/8 all the time, and half ounce. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So I think you're saying pretty much what I would say. I'm actually matching the hooks and the size of the bucktails to the size of the plastic.
Correct. Yep.
You know, so if I'm fishing a 6+ inch plastic, I'm using up to an 8/0 for fluke.
Exactly.
You know, the larger ones. But to your point, you're fishing usually the 3 or 4/0. Well, you're also, you mentioned you're fishing the 3.5 to 4.5 inch, which is perfect. I mean, that is perfect. You want to have just the right amount hanging off the back. You don't want the mass to overwhelm the gap, but you don't want a gap that, you know, twice the depth of the plastic itself, right? So that, you know, that's how I personally look at it. You know, Heaven and Elle was on here. She's mentioning this in the chat. She likes smaller hooks as well, and people make fun of her for it. She mentioned that in the last stream that we did with her. People give her crap for it, but I guess you really can't, because all you have to do is look. And I don't know if you're familiar with Elle, but she catches
she's a slayer.
Fish.
Oh yeah, she's a slayer for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
John, what are you using, John?
I was actually just rigging it up, and Mike, thank you for the obviously subtle hint that you're bringing back the Moab in the way.
yeah.
So this is what I got: Captain Hank's bucktail with a I guess it's the 5-inch Moab, right, Mike?
The 5.5.
Okay,
yep.
So yeah, that's typically what you're going to see me use it. So something like this, or I'm going to be using a 4.5 Ripper, and it's going to be on a bucktail.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the bucktail. It really, when it comes down to it, I think you just got to find what you're confident in. But you know, if you're not sure, if you've never used either, just go out and try them both, and one of them will turn into your confidence bait. I will also say this, and you know, well, actually, no, I'll leave that go, because I don't want the tackle guys getting in a debate.
Come on, it's fun.
That's always the best part, man.
But I guarantee if you took a poll and asked if you could only fish one thing the rest of your life, and I guarantee the most popular answer would be a white bucktail.
Absolutely.
So hands down.
Yeah.
So like I said, again, if it's not me personally, you know, it's obviously the most popular opinion. So is one thing in the bag is a white bucktail. So, and that's their go-to. Me, I was a plastic guy, hence why we start the company, because I love soft plastics, and not that I didn't take the time to learn how to really fish a bucktail or this or that. I've tried, but most of my success was just on soft plastics.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? And that was really it. Like I said, I fished $14 lures compared to, $1 soft plastic and caught more fish. It's just, I don't know. And that's kind of what pushed me into that.
I'm with you there. I would much rather, if I could only bring one thing, it's going to be a soft plastic, on a bucktail. It's 100%. I mean, I can't think now look, everybody loves the top water bite. I mean, you just get one blow up and that can make your entire day. But if I'm going out to catch fish, I'm always starting with the bucktail, and I'm always starting with the soft plastic on it. Just works. It just works for me. And again, a lot of it, I think, comes down to what's your confidence lure. If you're not confident in what you're throwing, you can throw it next to somebody throwing the same thing you're not going to catch. I don't know why, but I think anybody in the chat, anybody listening to this on the podcast, or anyone here can admit that they've used something that somebody next to them has been using. They didn't feel good about it. They didn't catch fish.
Real quick, just because James Flynn has asked it, this is the second time he's asking, is a couple go-to shops that are well stocked with your products, Mike?
So well stocked would be Chris at Tight Lines, always well stocked. Tackle Direct, always well stocked. Where else we had? Avalon Hodgepodge, Sea Isle Bait and Tackle. Where else we had? Up north. Depending where they're up and down. They're North Jersey, they're South Jersey, further down. So wherever. But usually the most stocked, the most consistent would be Chris at Tight Lines and Tackle Direct.
Well, the one thing, don't forget, James, is go to their website directly too. It's go straight to the source if you're able to do that as well.
So we have a little more option on our website. So I was talking to Ed earlier about the jig heads. We had to make a decision this year, Dave and I as a company, that we can't sell to shops right now. And we don't know if we're going to continue to because of inflation, things like that. So we were fine during COVID, the pandemic. We were, thriving, and then we started to see the trickle down effect like everybody else did. So we didn't, we thought we were going to escape it, and it was not the case. It hit us just as hard, just as hard as it hit everybody else. And so prices are up, lead's up, everything's up. So to stay fair and relevant, where your products are still going to move, it's costing way too much right now. So we had to make a decision as a company that we're only going to carry jig heads on our website as of right now. Chris was always stock, Tackle Direct, tons of other shops, but right now it's not feasible. So we had to make that decision. I know it's gonna, it wasn't a popular one, but unfortunately, like I said, it was what was best for the company. So in about 2 weeks, we are re-releasing the Moabs, the 5.5, along with the 8-inch, just in time for spring. We're launching painted eye jigs this year. We still have our bullet heads with longer double shank hooks, all that good stuff. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be on the website in about 2 weeks. We're fully stocked with plastics right now. So like you said, I appreciate it. We always want to shop, the shop local, right? We shop at shops or the website. It's all good to us either way. You know what I mean? Business is business, and you're supporting me, you're supporting somebody else. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm buying most of mine down at Hodgepodge. They're always well stocked.
Yeah, they've always been good to us. And again, one of our first shops, and they were always good to us, and they're always well stocked. So we appreciate all their business and all the shops and everybody that supported us from day one. And like I said, real quick, while we're talking about this, to Chris, I know we talk about him a lot. You guys had him on the show, but without Chris, like, he helped push our company. He helped, as a company, introduce me to people I would have never met. So like I said, a ton of respect for him. He didn't know me from anything. And, right. He helped Dave and I out, introduce us to Chris. He got us in, Tight Lines. He hooked us up with guys at Tackle Direct. We met him, before we went into this big meeting, this big sit down, and had no clue what we were in for. And he's pumping us up. We're drinking coffee. We go in and we were in way over our heads. And it was funny. And like I said, and that was because of him. So, and nothing but love for Chris. And I wanted to let everybody know that, like I said, he continued to, to be there for us and help and push us, as a company. And, we never forget that. And we always appreciate that. And, like I said, he was a huge help to us. So, and phenomenal fisherman, phenomenal person. So,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If he's listening, we appreciate it, Chris, always.
He might be out fishing.
He might be out fishing. He's a sicko. He might be out. Yeah, he lives there, so he gets to catch them certain tides. You know what I mean? I got to drive an hour and a half to meet him. So,
Right.
Yeah, he's 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So.
I'm with you on that drive. You're saying after work you take the hour and a half. I used to work. Well, I'm still with the same company, but we don't go into the office anymore. So I can't just duck out of work and leave from Bala Cynwyd.
I got you.
Down. I'm all the way out, near Spring Mountain.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not an easy trip after work.
No, not at all. That's a tough ride. And Bala Cynwyd's like the worst part of the city to be in at rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
And especially if you got fishing on the mine and you're in a rush, you ain't going anywhere quick.
No. But I used to put the kayak on the car and, go to work. And then as soon as work was done, I duck out an hour early, which was always odd because I go running out of the office in, shorts and a tank top after being dressed for work. And then I'd head down. Now I can't do that,
No. It's a total drug. It's a total sickness of what we do and what we think seems rational in our heads, right? And I mean to catch a perfect tide, we think in an hour and a half, and my wife asked me to take a drive, 20 minutes, and I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And but yeah, she'll always say you'll drive an hour and a half to go fishing for 2 hours and drive back home. I'm like, yeah, of course, you know what I mean? So it's funny, but it's a total sickness, total passion. You know what I mean? And like I said, if you don't have it, you don't understand it.
Right. Well, we all have it. Everybody in the chat has it. Everybody listening has it. It's worth it. I can't complain about driving my son to Virginia for soccer tournaments in it anymore because I say I don't mind driving, down to the Delaware or even Virginia to go fishing, just for a weekend. So now every Virginia soccer trip, my wife's like, well, you can just do it. It's no big deal. James Flynn is saying that I need to move east. Yes, I do. I need to move closer to the water. Yeah. If you have a new jig idea that would be unique, what would you recommend to get it to market?
I mean, it's
start
tough,
with a big pile of money.
Yeah. It's gonna take money to try to really. It's tough, right? Because nothing that we do is unique, right? Soft plastics aren't unique. Bucktails, jig heads, so they've all come from something. We're trying to put our own little spin on them. I mean, that's a tough one. Like I said, I really, what I did personally is like I said earlier in the show, what I did is I went and banged on doors, and I've met people who, you're giving a ton of free tackle away, fish this, fish that, and hopefully by word of mouth, you know what I mean? And that's kind of your best option is to have some guys fish your products, go talk with some shop owners, and then hopefully, it can grow from there. So, I mean, that's kind of what I would recommend if you had something you thought was, unique to, and people wouldn't, would buy. So that's what I would do.
Get from an idea, you have to mold, prototype it, CAD, have someone cut a mold, design, figure out how the hook's going to work, what design hook you're going to use. I mean,
there's a lot to it. And as far as protecting that idea, I mean, you're going to have to look at, can you patent it? Can you get some kind of utility patent? And that's going to be really, really tough to show that you have something so unique that nobody else can model the utility of it or the actual design of it. Because if you think about it, like for example, the bucktails that are that Ed and I kind of worked on together, and that he's now selling under the Fat Dad name. They're different, but there's nothing that I can protect. There's nothing that Ed can protect on it. Somebody else can just do it, because there's no way that you can protect that. But if you have something truly unique, you would do best by talking to a patent attorney. I know some people that have tried to get patents on their own, and they just said, I should have just gotten the attorney. but that again is going to cost money. So to Ed's point, you're going to have to get the actual engineering of the mold put together. You're going to have to get the mold put together for the prototypes. You're going to have to pay for the patent. Then you're going to have to, all the while, hope that it's going to be big enough that somebody's going to want to buy it in mass, to make it all that money and that expenditure worth it. Now, if you have something, that's awesome, because you can make a lot of money. You could end up selling it to somebody else. Hell, Mike might even say, hey, we want to buy it, sell it to us. Ed might want to buy, it doesn't, Rapala, man, that is an undertaking that, if you have an idea that's going to be good, I all the best to you, man. I hope that you're successful, but that is a big, big, big task that you have ahead of you.
And then once you the patent, having a lawyer on retainer to go after people, because lawyers
right.
ain't cheap
So
either.
and that's the hard thing. So you go and do all this. You get a lawyer. You get a patent, and all somebody has to do is tweak your idea that you spent all this money on to do this. You see it all the time. And, so all they have to do is tweak something a little bit. That's not, and they can say, no, this is not this. And it's over. So that's the thing. It's tough. So I wouldn't even go that route. Just I would save the time and I would try to figure something out if that's really, if you thought you had something unique enough to do. But again, you go the lawyer route, you do this, and then you have something that's patented, somebody tweaks it, that's it. You know what I mean? And you buy the rights to something doesn't mean, you own that specific model style, but all they have to do is change it a little bit, and it's different, and they avoid legal action. So it's a tough one.
It's a lot though. And we've got the guy here that's going through a lot of that stuff. Maybe you didn't do the patents, but you know what it's like getting it up and running. Ed's in the middle of that right now, working with different tackle shops, like Tight Lines, and working with different people that can help promote the bucktails. So I know it's a lot of work. And I always say I'm jealous of Ed and John because they produce something that people can pick up and, use, and they get to see people out there using it. I don't really have that, right? My stuff is just information or hopefully entertainment, or at least a diversion on a Monday night. But yeah, there's just so much to it. At the same time, there's just so much work there that I wouldn't want to do. I can say I'm jealous, but I don't want that part of it. You guys worked your asses off to get where you are at this point. All right. So let's jump right back into these plastics. Just a couple of other species. Weak fish. What are you looking at for the weak fish? And specifically for the weak fish, I'm going to ask for colors.
So my go-to color, if you want to pull that slide back up real quick, Rich, I can maybe point out what would be my top three. So my top three are Betty White, always, Bangin' Bubblegum, but there's also another pink called Tide Runner, and Ghost Malone, my go-to.
And are you using the Ghost Malone at night? Is that your go-to to start off the darker times or the cloudy days?
So earlier, it's weird. Earlier in the year, like earlier in the spring, at night, I'm using Ghost. I use Dreams too, but Ghost, it's personal preference, right? That's what I've caught a ton of fish on that color. It'll work for a week or two, and then it won't work anymore. So it's weird. It happened last year, and like I said, I was hammering. That's all I had on, and then it stopped working, and I had to switch to another color. But yeah, usually Ghost Malone and would be the Bangin' or the Tide Runner, my go-to.
Don, I know you have an opinion on it. What are you looking at for weak fish?
Tide Runner.
Tide Runner?
Plain and simple, man. That's the color. I got 3 or 4 bags, brand new bags sitting behind me, and yep, there she is.
So this is actually the 5.5, but yeah, it's a different. It's a deep pink with like a purple belly, and that's usually my go-to for. I catch a ton of fish on these too. So definitely top 3 color.
I mean, I'm always going pink for weak fish. Again, I don't know why. It can be the middle of the night. I do like, again, the Ghost Malone color is pretty close to what I would also fish at night. Even what's the one on the bottom right? The Nightmare or something?
The Dreams and Nightmares.
Dreams and Nightmares. That one looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's something about a pure black in a dark night. It my understanding is it offers a great contrast underwater because no matter how dark it is, fish can still see, and they can see when they have that really dark back on there, they're going to be able to see that outline really crisply in that water. So the darker the water, the darker the lure that I use, or the darker the bait. But man, bubblegum or the Tide Runner color looks like that's going to be a great color as well. I would start personally with those. Actually, for fluke at night, I would actually go with those as well, along with the Betty White. Betty White, I would probably go with first. Yeah. Any other species that you would recommend? So we talked about specks, we talked about fluke, we talked about striped bass, talked about redfish, even largemouth and smallmouth. I'm sure muskie is in there, pickerel is in there. Any others that you should mention?
So we've actually caught bluefin tuna on the mullet. Inshore, like little football bluefins. So I mean, it doesn't. You can name all the species you want. They'll catch. When you saw cobia, trout, everything. So we can, it's not limited to anything. Like you said, the way they swim, the way they move, depend the way you fish. And we've got pictures of tuna. We got cobia, all types of stuff. So tarpon. So anything down south you could think of, amberjack, anything down south you could think of, up north you could think of. We've had guys we ship out to overseas that are stationed overseas that send pictures of where they're at, either Japan or things like that, and they're catching fish. So they're using the mullet, the rippers, all around the world, and they're catching fish. So it's not limited to any type of species. So it'll work. It'll work for everything.
Have you gotten a first report of a shark yet on them?
Yes, we've caught plenty of cow noses, not snagged either, actually, 8, but I did have a report of actual spinner shark in a Delaware Bay, that they were actually fluke fishing and wound up hooking a spinner shark.
Nice.
So
I would suspect that you would get a number, it's from the offshore guys, a number of blue sharks, some spinners, because I know they absolutely love soft plastics. And I would typically pick them up on soft plastics back in the day when we were mahi pot hopping. We're just jumping around looking for mahi, and there's always blue sharks around once you get off off shore a little bit, and caught quite a bit of them. Now, this is well before your company existed. I think it was probably before John and Ed were born, but it was a while ago. But man, it would be cool to get. Maybe I'll try this summer. Get a nice shark on there to get you a picture for it.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate that.
That would be fun. It would be a fun challenge.
That would be fun.
All right. Is there anything else that we should add before we let you get back to what little time you have not working?
I think we covered pretty much the basis of everything that we could tonight.
Yeah, I agree. So, Mike, thank you very much for coming on. Really, really appreciated it. A lot of positive feedback in the chat as well, and several people. I don't know if you saw the chat scrolling by or not. You have a bunch of new customers that are going to give your stuff a go. I can tell.
My phone's actually been going off. Yeah, all the whole podcast. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and it means a lot. And I really like to thank everybody who supported us from day one, who's always had our back, who's always pushed us, and it really means a lot to us. And like I said, and we do it for everybody, and we're going to continue to go. And also my buddy Pete DeChanko and his son Chase, they're listening, they're big fans. And he's a real good friend of mine too, and another guy who had my back from day one. And like I said, without all these guys, man, we're nothing. There's too many people to name, but like I said, I love being on, and big fan of all you guys, and I really do appreciate it.
So there you have it. I want to thank Mike from Northeast Jigs for coming on and spending some time with us tonight. It was great to hear about the history of the company, what they've gone through, and really to hear about the products that they have to offer. And if you're not in the areas that carry Northeast Jig right now, you should really look into it. Look them up online and grab some of these plastics, because they are just amazing, and nobody can beat the naming of the colors for their products. So thanks again to Mike for coming on. For those that are listening, really appreciate you stopping by, and I have to ask, as usual, If you're finding value in this podcast, please go ahead and subscribe or follow, depending on which platform you're on. Share it out. And of course, if you could rate it and leave a positive comment, that just helps us to grow. So thank you very much. We'll catch you next week with a new episode. And until then, tight lines.